They thought grief had made me frail, a dusty relic easily brushed aside. They saw my husband's legacy, our life's work in intricate timepieces, as nothing but cold assets, ripe for the taking. But they underestimated the silent precision of a watchmaker and the power of a woman who knows exactly when to reclaim her time. For the first 6 months after my husband, Jean-Luc, passed, time itself felt broken. I am Margaret Dubois, and for 50 years, the two of us ran Dubois Horlogerie, a small, hallowed workshop in a quiet city quarter where the scent of old brass and cleaning oil was the very air we breathed. Now, at 72, the workshop was my only comfort. Its gentle, discordant symphony of 100 ticking hearts, a constant reminder of the one that had stopped. It was into this fragile piece that my daughter-in-law, Veronica, descended. She was a whirlwind of practiced concern, her sleek, modern sensibilities a stark contrast to the venerable clutter of my life's work. "Margaret, darling, you can't keep doing this to yourself," she'd say, her perfectly manicured hand gesturing vaguely at the tools and half-finished movements on my workbench. Rattling around in this dusty old place, it's not healthy. Her focus, however, quickly narrowed to one thing: the heavy, rosewood case that sat in the old safe behind the counter. The Dubois Legacy Collection. It wasn't just a collection of antique watches, it was our history, forged in gold and steel. Each piece was a chapter. The Patek Philippe he'd traded a prized motorcycle for on our 10th anniversary. The Breguet with the moon phase dial we'd spent a winter restoring. The naval chronometer that had nearly bankrupted us, but established our reputation. Veronica saw them not as memories, but as assets, and in her eyes I was no longer a capable guardian. "It's a burden, Margaret," she cooed one afternoon, her voice a silken trap. "A heavy, ticking reminder of what you've lost. And frankly, it's not safe here. A bank vault under my name for simplicity, it's the only sensible thing. Let me take this weight off your shoulders." I was tired. Not just weary from grief, but a deep, cellular exhaustion that made resistance feel like a mountain I couldn't climb. My son, Leo, always eager to keep the peace, echoed her sentiments. "She's just trying to help, Mom." So I relented. I watched her carry not just a box of watches out the door, but the tangible heart of my life with Jean-Luc, wrapped in a blanket of false promises and predatory care. A year crawled by, each day marked by the hollow space where the rosewood case used to be. The grief for Jean-Luc had settled into a dull, persistent ache, but a new, sharper longing had taken its place. I missed the feel of the cool metal in my hands, the satisfying click of a case closing, the intimate knowledge of each watch's unique soul. They were my companions, my history. I first broached the subject with Veronica on a Sunday call. "I was thinking," I began, trying to sound casual, "I'd love to have Jean-Luc's Patek Philippe back, just for a while. To have it on my desk." The line went quiet for a beat too long. "Oh, Margaret," she finally said, a note of strained patience in her voice. "The vault is such a hassle to get into. The paperwork, the appointments, it's a whole process. I'll see what I can do when I have a spare moment." The spare moment never came. A month later, I asked again. This time, her response was tinged with a condescending pity. "Are you sure you want it? You know how these things can trigger memories. We're all so worried about you dwelling on the past." Leo, when I appealed to him, was predictably unhelpful. "Mom, Veronica's managing a huge gallery opening. She has a lot on her plate," he'd say, his voice pleading. "She's keeping them safe for you, for all of us. It's for the best. Don't you trust her?" Trust. The word hung in the air between us, heavy and tarnished. I had trusted her. But her evasions were becoming more and more elaborate, her tone increasingly dismissive. The final time I asked, her exasperation was palpable. "Margaret, we just looked at them last month, don't you remember?" she snapped, her voice cold. "You were perfectly happy with the arrangement. We hadn't looked at them since the day she took them." Her lie was so blatant, so dismissive of my reality, it was like a slap in the face. It wasn't just about the watches anymore. It was about my mind, my memory, my right to my own possessions and my own feelings. She was subtly, systematically, trying to gaslight me into believing I was a confused old woman, incapable and forgetful. The warm, gentle water I had been floating in was starting to feel unnervingly hot. I was being boiled, slowly, And my son, my own son, was standing by, telling me how lovely and warm the water was. The sense of isolation was a chilling premonition. Something was terribly wrong. The catalyst arrived not as a dramatic confrontation, but as a quiet, digital harbinger of doom in my email inbox. It was from Julian, a dear friend and my late husband's most gifted apprentice, now a highly respected horological expert in Geneva. The subject line read, "Congratulations, Margaret, a bold move." My heart gave a nervous flutter. I opened it. "My friend," Julian's message began, "I was just sent the pre-release catalog for the upcoming Aurelian auctions, and I was stunned to see the Dubois legacy on full display. I had no idea you were parting with them. The Geneva star in particular looks magnificent. It's about time the world saw Jean-Luc's genius. I hope you get a record-breaking price." He'd attached a link. My hand trembled as I clicked it. The webpage loaded, slick and opulent, displaying the crest of Aurelian Auctions, one of the most exclusive auction houses in the world. And there they were, my watches, Jean-Luc's watches, our life's work, photographed against black velvet, gleaming under professional lights. The collection was listed as the property of a distinguished European connoisseur. Then I saw it. The centerpiece, the pride of the collection, Jean-Luc's personal Patek Philippe, was grotesquely renamed the Geneva Star. I scrolled down, my breath catching in my throat, until I found the consignor's profile. There was a professionally taken photo of Veronica, smiling serenely, poised and elegant. The text beside it was a masterpiece of audacious fiction. It described her as a visionary art patron and devoted custodian of European precision craftsmanship, who, after inheriting a significant family collection, felt it was her duty to share its beauty with the world. The betrayal was so profound, so absolute, it stole the air from my lungs. This wasn't just theft. This was an erasure. She was stealing my husband's legacy, my family's history, and rewriting it with herself as the protagonist. She hadn't just taken the watches. She had taken our story. The image of her smiling face, claiming our life's passion as her own, shattered the last vestiges of my naive trust. The warm, gentle family, the benefit of the doubt, the hope for harmony. It all evaporated in an instant, replaced by the cold, hard clarity of a diamond. She saw me as a relic, an obstacle to be managed and ultimately discarded. The final straw hadn't just landed, it had broken my back. A night of profound, heart-shattering grief gave way to a dawn of icy resolve. The tears stopped, and in their place settled a quiet, focused anger, the same meticulous precision I used to reassemble a complex watch movement. I didn't call Leo. I knew his weakness, his desperate need for a peaceful life would only be a hindrance. He was a buffer, not a sword, and for what was to come, I needed a sword. My power was not in legal battles or emotional appeals. It was hidden, like the maker's mark on a vintage timepiece, visible only to those who knew where to look. For 50 years, I hadn't just been a watchmaker. I had been a node in a global network of trust, expertise, and mutual respect. It was time to activate that network. My first call was not to the police, but to Alastair Finch in London, a director on the board of the International Horological Society, and a man with whom Jean-Luc and I had shared countless glasses of wine and spirited debates over escapement mechanisms. I explained the situation calmly, my voice devoid of the hysteria I felt inside. Alastair's reaction was a sputtering, aristocratic rage. "The audacity! That vulgarian!" he roared down the line. "Margaret, leave this with me, we protect our own." Less than an hour later, my phone rang. It was Alastair. "I've spoken to a friend," he said, his voice now grimly efficient. "He's the real deal. Inspector Davies, Art Crime Unit, Interpol. He's expecting your call. He knows this is not some senile fantasy." The video call with Inspector Davies was the turning point. He was a man with tired eyes, but a sharp, attentive gaze. He listened patiently as I laid out the facts. Then I began to describe the collection, not as a list of assets, but as a watchmaker. "The Geneva Star," I said, looking directly into the camera, "the Patek. If you look at the blue sapphire on the crown, under 20 times magnification, you will find a micro-engraving. It is a single, cursive M. My husband put it there for me on our 30th anniversary. The Vacherin Constantin from 1895 has a replacement jewel on the palette fork, a synthetic ruby I custom-cut myself in 1988. It has a microscopic flaw, visible only from a 45-degree angle under polarized light. The naval chronometer's balance spring. I can tell you its exact oscillation rate from memory. I went on, detailing the secret signatures, the invisible repairs, the intimate flaws known only to Jean-Luc and me. Davies' expression shifted from professional interest to profound respect. He wasn't just listening to a victim. He was receiving an expert testimony of unimpeachable authority. "Mrs. Dubois," he said finally, a new energy in his voice. "She thinks she's selling watches, but you're going to prove she stole a life's work. We formulated a plan. A quiet intervention would be messy and allow her to spin a narrative of a family dispute. No, the takedown had to be public. It had to be absolute. We would let the auction proceed. We would let her bask in her stolen glory. And at the moment of her triumph, I would step out of the shadows she had cast me into and become the arbiter of her fate." The auction hall at Aurelian's was a cathedral of wealth, all hushed tones and expectant whispers. From a discreet position in a small, private viewing lounge arranged by Inspector Davies, I watched Veronica on the main floor. She was radiant, dressed in a sharp, emerald-green suit, accepting compliments with a gracious smile. She was playing the part of the sophisticated patron flawlessly, the benevolent guardian of history. To her, I was a ghost, safely tucked away in a nursing home of her imagination. My son, Leo, sat beside her, looking proud and blissfully unaware, a lamb being led to the slaughter of his own conscience. Lot after lot went by. The tension in the room built, a palpable current of anticipation. Finally, the auctioneer, a man with a voice as smooth as polished mahogany, announced the final item. "And now, ladies and gentlemen, the crown jewel of the evening. A piece of unparalleled provenance and horological significance. We present the Geneva Star." The room fell silent as the magnified image of Jean-Luc's Patek Philippe filled the large screen behind the stage. It was beautiful, but seeing it there, stripped of its true name and history, felt like a desecration. The bidding started, fast and furious, climbing into the stratosphere. Veronica's smile widened with every new figure. She was living her apotheosis, the moment her deception would be transmuted into millions of dollars and unimpeachable prestige. The auctioneer's voice rose. At 1.8 million, going once, going twice. This was the moment. As he raised his gavel for the final strike, a calm, clear voice echoed through the silent hall. I wished to speak. Every head turned. I stepped out from the side entrance, Inspector Davies and two plainclothes officers flanking me like quiet sentinels. I was dressed simply in a dark wool dress, but I stood tall. Veronica's face, projected in close-up on the screen next to the watch, went from triumphant to ashen in a single, horrifying second. Leo looked utterly bewildered, his eyes darting between me and his wife. I walked slowly towards the front. "My name is Margaret Dubois," I announced, my voice steady, amplified by the microphone a staff member nervously held out to me. "And I am the widow of the man who made that watch. It is not the Geneva Star. It is the Patek Philippe of Jean-Luc Dubois, and it, along with the entire collection presented here tonight, was stolen from my workshop." A collective gasp rippled through the audience. Veronica shot to her feet. "She's confused. She's my mother-in-law. She's not well," she cried, her voice shrill with panic. I ignored her, my gaze fixed on the auctioneer. "I can prove my claim. I ask that you bring a jeweler's loupe and a light to the podium. Examine the sapphire on the winding crown. You will find a tiny, micro-engraved letter M. For Margit. My husband carved it there for me. It is my secret signature on his heart." The room erupted into chaos. The auctioneer, seeing Inspector Davies step forward, had no choice but to comply. A camera zoomed in, projecting the verification onto the giant screen for all to see. The silence was absolute as the gemologist found it. There, unmistakable, was the delicate, cursive M. Veronica crumpled. It was over. As the flashing lights of news cameras began to strobe through the room, Inspector Davies approached her. "Veronica Hayes," he said, his voice carrying an authority that cut through the noise. You are under arrest for grand larceny and international fraud." The sharp, metallic click of the handcuffs was louder than any gavel. Her moment of ultimate glory had become her public execution. The fallout was immediate and spectacular. The Aurelian auction became the art world's most sensational scandal in a decade. My story, the story of the quiet watchmaker who brought down a high-flying fraudster, was everywhere. But I took no pleasure in the headlines. My victory wasn't about public spectacle. It was about private reclamation. A few days later, Inspector Davies himself brought the Rosewood case back to my workshop. He placed it gently on the counter, the same counter where I had last seen it in Veronica's possession. "These belong with their rightful guardian," he said, his tired eyes holding a deep, genuine respect. "Your courage was as precise as your craftsmanship, Mrs. Dubois." The inevitable visit from my son came that weekend. Leo looked haggard, aged by a decade in a week. He stood awkwardly amidst the familiar clutter of the shop, a stranger in what should have been his second home. He mumbled apologies, tried to explain Veronica's ambition and the pressure she was under. He pleaded for my help. "A letter, Mom," he begged, his voice cracking. "For the judge. A letter of forgiveness. Think of our son, your grandson, Jack. Please, don't let his mother go to prison." I listened patiently, my hands resting on the cool, familiar wood of the watch case. When he was finished, I looked at him, not with anger, but with a profound and sorrowful clarity. "I will always love Jack, Leo. He is my grandson, and he is innocent in all of this. I will ensure he is cared for, and knows his grandmother loves him." I paused, letting the words settle. "But my relationship with you and his mother is over. It ended the moment she decided my life's work was hers to sell, and it was cemented every time you chose her comfort over my truth. You asked me to trust. I did, and you both betrayed that trust in the most absolute way." He began to weep, but I felt no impulse to comfort him. "My forgiveness is not something you can have to lessen her sentence," I said, my voice quiet but unyielding. "My dignity is not a commodity to be traded. My home, my work, and my final years are my own. You are no longer welcome here uninvited. That is my boundary. It is not negotiable." He left, finally understanding that the gentle, accommodating mother he had always known was gone, replaced by a woman who had rediscovered the steel in her own spine. I had not just reclaimed my property, I had reclaimed my sovereignty. 6 months later, the ticking of the clocks in my workshop was no longer a lament for a lost past, but the steady, reassuring heartbeat of my new life. The scandal had faded, Veronica had been sentenced, and a quiet, peaceful order had been restored. But it was a new kind of order. My life was not just my own again, it had expanded. True to his word, Inspector Davies had reached out. My unique, intimate knowledge of timepiece craftsmanship, he had argued, was an invaluable asset in the fight against art crime. I had formally accepted a role as a special consultant for Interpol's art crime unit. The final scene of my story is not one of quiet retirement, but of vibrant engagement. I am sitting at my beloved workbench, the familiar weight of a loop in my eye, examining the intricate inner workings of a 19th-century carriage clock. The Dubois Legacy Collection rests safely in its case, not as a memorial, but as a working reference library. Propped up against a set of calipers is a tablet, and on the screen is the face of Inspector Davies, live from a sterile office in Lyon. "The forger was clever, Margit," he says, his image pixelated but his voice clear. "But we think he slipped up on the escapement assembly." I lean closer to the clock before me, making a delicate adjustment with a pair of tweezers. "They always do, Inspector," I reply, a small, confident smile playing on my lips. "They can replicate the face, but they can never replicate the soul." I had spent a lifetime mastering the art of time. I had fought for my past, and in doing so, had forged an entirely new future. I was no longer just a keeper of old treasures. I was a guardian, a protector. My hands, though wrinkled, were steady, and my vision, once clouded by grief and trust, was now sharper and clearer than ever before. I was Margit Dubois, and my time was finally, unequivocally, my own. Thank you for listening to my story. It's not always easy to draw a line, especially with family, but finding your own voice and defending your own time is a battle worth fighting. If you've ever had a similar experience, please feel free to share. It helps to know you're not alone. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories.